It had never entered my head until it was suggested to me by one of those special teachers you can be lucky to have at school, my history teacher, who said to me, "I think you could be quite good at law. Why don't you have a go at that?" I knew nothing about it. None of my family had been in the law. My parents both left school at 13. My dad was a bookmaker. You've probably heard of Corals, the book is. He was half of Corals. And my mother, who would have loved to be a doctor and watched every medical thing on television she could, she too just had to leave school at 13. But they were always really interested in the education of their children. I graduated from Girton College, Cambridge in 1958. Then I did stay on for another year to do a specialist master's degree in a cluster of international law subjects, having discovered that was the sort of law that interested me most. And between the first degree and that master's degree, I was very lucky to do an internship at the UN, in the legal division of the UN, where I learned so much in my time there. My first job, when I came back from doing my doctorate at Yale, and there was a book that came out from that. My first job was then with the Royal Institute of International Affairs, Chatham House, as their in-house staff lawyer. And that was a very happy time. I've always been interested in law at the edge of politics. That was when I began writing my 4 books on UN peacekeeping. It is firstly somewhat awkward to be sitting in your bar class with the kids you're teaching the next day at the university law school. We all took it in good part, but it was strange. And the truth of the matter is that by that time I'd been doing nothing but international law for some long years, and was already reasonably well known in the field, but remembered very little of anything else I'd done. And there were some subjects, such as tax, for example, that I'd never done. And to do all of that while you're teaching is quite tough and not the advised route. There was a very famous solicitor called Francis Mann, but who was a great expert in both private and public international law. And he told me, don't go to a set of chambers where there are lots of other international lawyers. Go to a set that needs to find out it needs an international lawyer. And he told me to go to what was then 4 Essex Court, which was a leading commercial set, but had no international lawyer. And so I found myself thrown into the international law aspects of big commercial cases. That took up 3 months of each year, and I remain very grateful to LSE that they allowed me to squeeze that in. I was meticulously careful about never letting the students down. You know, we would do double things before I went and single things when I got back to make up the lost ground. And they used to like it because there were lively things, you know, to tell them about. But that really immersed me in the world of UN human rights. I took silk in 1986. I believe 10 years is the minimum in which from call to take silk, so I did that then, and I was already appearing in court, often within, as I've said, larger commercial cases at that time. When youngsters today ask me, young women, what's the most important piece of advice, my answer always is, make sure that your life partner is an extremely tolerant person. And I've been blessed in that my husband, Terence, has always been tremendously supportive and adaptable, and that's made everything a lot easier. It was, of course, easier when today's Supreme Court was the House of Lords in the same building as he was in at that time in the House of Commons. So he could run from one end of the building to the other to see how, when I was pleading, it was all going along and what time I might be through and who'd be back first for the nanny. I had pleaded in front of the court, so I knew some of the judges. Some of them wrote warm notes of welcome. It was just all tremendously exciting. And the International Court, by the way, is one of the major organs of the UN, just as is the General Assembly and Security Council, but it's the only organ that is out at The Hague to allow it to keep a little judicial distance from the politicking. Children are very good for keeping your feet on the ground. When I went to the International Court of Justice, the first day you appear on the bench, it's all extremely ceremonial, and the president makes a speech about you and so on and so forth. And my daughter, the family had all turned up for it, and my daughter had handed me wrapped up a little present saying, "This is for today." And when I opened it, it was a little booklet entitled "How to Bluff Your Way in International Law." I have been, from the time I was lucky enough to get the UN internship, deeply immersed in United Nations matters. Last year I published a large 2-volume work on the law of the United Nations, a practitioner's book, not just what the Charter says. And I've written books on UN peacekeeping and about different aspects of UN law through the years. When you get to the International Court, you find you have to be able to turn your hand to all aspects. My parents lived to a good old age, and happily they were still alive when I went to Buckingham Palace to be made a dame. They were present on that occasion. It was a very special day for us all. Sadly, they did not live to see me made president of the court. I decided to leave the court when I finished my 3 years as president. It seemed the right moment to go, and I'd had just under 15 years there. I didn't want to turn the clock back, and I did 3 things. The first was to take on the presidency of the British Institute of International and Comparative Law. The second thing was to get on with these 2 volumes of United Nations law, the practitioner's work, and that was completed just about a year ago. And the third thing was I was invited to be the legal advisor to the Chilcot inquiry, whose brief was to examine everything that had happened between the UK and Iraq from 2001 to 2009 and offer lessons to be learned. So that was enormously interesting. So I've been one of the lucky ones for whom the path was entirely smooth, and I had a lot of support from great mentors along the way.